I'm Dr. Katie Berlin.
And I'm Dr. Alyssa Watson.
Thanks for joining us in the Veterinary Breakroom. This is where we have short conversations about relevant topics in veterinary medicine today. And this week, we're going to be talking about something that's seasonally timely, which seems to suddenly come up out of nowhere every year anyway, which is Veterinary Technician Week. So this is always a really exciting time, I think, for me, because I see everybody going crazy on social media thanking veterinary technicians, and I think that's amazing. That's one of my favorite things to see. What about you, Alyssa? How does this time of year land with you?
Yep, absolutely. I think kind of the same way, just like you said, kind of the same way Halloween does. Like I start
Mm,
getting excited for it and I'm like, oh, I have all this time to prepare. And then the next thing you know, it's here. so
yes,
I, but
yes.
I do love, just like you said, I love to see, it's a time where oftentimes on social media, everybody will be tagging all of the technicians that they used to work with and things like that. And it's fun to kind of catch up and see what people have been doing because, over the 20 years of my career, I've moved around a little bit. And, the technicians that I've worked with in the past have also moved around quite a bit. And so it gives you that kind of time to just reflect and touch base and, remember the impact that those people had on your life and your career. And so that's really fun. But at the same time, I think one of the things that you and I really wanted to explore today was that, we we make a big deal this time of year, and there's, like you said, there's social media posts and there's gifts and there's swag and there's pizza parties and there's all of that. But really, these people show up every single day. Our team members show up every single day, and they really should be celebrated and recognized every single day. And as a veterinarian and an associate who, not necessarily is in that position where I can make huge decisions like giving raises or, hiring people or giving time off or schedule changing, what are the things that I can do every day, not just during vet tech week, to empower veterinary technicians and make them feel recognized in the workplace.
Yeah, I love what you just said, that this is something that, veterinary technicians deserve our respect and our willingness to work alongside them, and really have that colleague relationship with our technician teams. They deserve that year round, and just doing it during a week in October is not obviously a good solution to keeping anybody happy and growing and sustainably in the profession. And we know that veterinary technicians, very often have a short shelf life, because they just don't find work that fulfills them and pays them enough to stay in it long term. And that's really upsetting that that's still true. But I at least feel encouraged that we're seeing more and more conversations about how veterinary technicians can be part of, really be professionals in their own right, because they are, and have all of the, sort of trappings of a successful career that doctors have. So I love that these conversations are happening more often. And today, you also had said you're an associate, I'm an associate. We've never been the owners or the bosses. And so we can't pay them more. We can't spend the clinic's money without our boss's approval. But how can we, in our day-to-day interactions with veterinary technicians and assistants, how can we allow them to feel empowered and excited to grow and learn use what they know and learn more, and then use that and offer up opinions and advocate for patients? Like, we can change a lot of that culture without having to be in charge, just by setting an example and asking what they want. So we asked veterinary technicians in the Veterinary Anesthesia Nerds Facebook group, which is a group full of very dedicated technicians and other members of the veterinary team. And we asked them what they wish their doctors did, or what their doctors do, to make them, to help them to feel empowered and excited and growing, and keep them in a position where they're happy and they want to stay. And we got a lot of good answers. Were you surprised by any of these, Alyssa?
Um, yeah, you know what? I was surprised by a few of them. There were, and there were a couple things that, when I read it, I did step back and say, "Oh gosh, I do that sometimes." The first one that jumps out in my mind is there was one person that said, "Don't call me your technician," and
Yeah.
I sat with that for a minute, and I was like, "Oh, I think I've done that,"
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and it didn't, it didn't occur to me how that would make somebody else feel. And now that it's been brought to my attention, it's something that I'm probably not going to do anymore. And it reminded me too of other things that I do, often say, and I hope that, that they recognize that I'm saying those things in, and we're including people in the team, but just little things about changing how you refer to team members and how you refer to patients. I have always been very careful, with my technicians, especially in front of clients, to refer to the patients as, as their patients. Because we are a team. It's not my
Hmm.
patient. It's our patient, or your patient. In fact, most of the nursing care is usually being done, by the technician. And so I really want them to take that, empowerment and feel that responsibility and feel that connection to their patient. And so I'm always saying that, when I come in and we're running through surgeries for the day, or drop-offs for the day, tell me about your patient, what's going on here. And so, so those are just some of those little changes we can make in our vocabulary that I think can have a really big impact. What do you think?
Yes, I think that's so true. I also was I've heard this before, but like it's so hard when so many of us do it. But the one thing I was like, oh my God, I definitely do that was, the possessive language that we can use. And I even did it before where I was like, I said my doctor or your doctor or something. And that never occurred to me to mind, because maybe because a doctor is traditionally sort of seen as like, a higher rank if you're going to rank like roles in the hospital. And that could be very tempting to sort of allow the language to follow those old rules. But if we're looking at being co professionals, then yeah, that doesn't necessarily make very much sense, nor is it respectful if the person does not want to be called that. So I'm interested though, because I feel like there are people that don't mind it at all, and well, we'll use the possessive language back and forth. And so I am curious to see sort of what the breakdown would be there, and like whether we should ask, because maybe people would say if they minded or didn't mind. But
Mhm.
I don't know, if it's the majority that does not want that language used, then we shouldn't use it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very good point too. I've certainly, in certain situations, if someone referred to me as theirs, depending on my relationship with that person, I might actually feel better about that, or feel that that was a team building, possessive. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess it does come back to asking people what they feel, and not automatically assuming that what they want or what makes them feel good. um,
Yeah.
I think I've told this story before on the podcast, but I, I read one time about a doctor that was having a lot of anxiety because she had a patient coming in that had all of these chronic conditions, like, blood pressure problems and diabetes and heart disease and all of these things. And she was seeing this patient on a second or third opinion, and she was just so anxious about what this patient was going to, ask her. She's like, I can't fix these things, and what's going to happen. And when she finally just asked this gentleman, what he wanted, he said, I would just really like to not fall down as much. And she said, we can work with that, and I always come back to that as like, step back, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed. Just like I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, what can I do to show all my appreciation? And how do I make everyone feel, that I'm thankful that they're here and I want them to be here and I rely so much on them. Instead of worrying about how I'm going to make that happen, maybe just step back and say, what can I do for you? What would make it easier or better for you? And it doesn't have to be, it can be just like in the moment, just right now, just today. Like, what can I do to help?
Yeah, you're so right. And the answers that we got, like the comments that we got when we asked this question on Facebook, there were a lot of common themes. Like the biggest answer that we got about what doctors could do to help techs, really feel empowered in their career, is to listen. And if a technician has a question, listen and don't act like they're annoying you because you don't think they need to know that. If they want to know, we should help them. And also admit that we don't know everything. And so that opens the door for technicians to teach us. And I can't even begin to quantify the amount of things I have learned from veterinary technicians. Like, basically everything I know about anal glands, I learned from veterinary technicians because I don't remember learning anything about that in school. And we certainly didn't have like an anal gland expression lab in school. So, like, to get into practice and then suddenly that was my job. I mean, I learned all of that from some really good LVTs. And things like if they're excited about anesthesia or pain management and they're speaking up for a patient and saying, hey, I want to try this local block on this cat, do you mind if we do that? I want to encourage that, because if I'm not doing everything I can for pain control, like, I want to know that and I want to learn. I just love that, seeing technicians step up and advocate for the patient and for their own skills. So these were really big themes. And one person even told a story about how she came to a place where the new vet that worked there, had found out that she gets migraines sometimes, and just outright asked her, like, hey, how can I support you when you're having a migraine flare? And she was like, no one's ever asked me that before. Just like how they can support me and make me feel seen and like a person with normal needs and wants that deserve to be fulfilled, and that like kind of broke my heart, and also was just a great story of like sometimes it has nothing to do with the work and everything to do with just being a team and looking out for each other.
Yep, absolutely. I think one of the other things, the other theme that I saw throughout a lot of these answers was that, technicians, they live in the real world. They see us every day. They know we don't know everything. So don't act like you know everything.
Yeah.
And while I hope that, I don't do that, I'm sure there are situations where even if in my head I'm not thinking, oh my gosh, I know more than this person, or this person doesn't need to know these things, I can definitely see a situation where I would come off as short or acting like a know-it-all because I might be, focused on something else, or I have, I've got 3 other patients. And so, I am sure there's a place for me to work on myself there, to step back and say, when I have that situation where I'm just feeling overwhelmed and flustered, let's make sure that I'm not making somebody else feel belittled just because I'm hurrying. And
Yeah.
so just to realize that in the course of the day, it'd be nice to take some time, and say, hey, this was going on earlier and it was crazy, and I know you had some questions, we've got time now to talk about that. We've got time now to talk about that protocol, or to, to say why I didn't want to vaccinate that animal, whatever it was that there were questions about earlier.
Looking to protect your canine patients against parasites? Look no further than Simparica Trio, Serolaner, Moxidectin, and Pyrantel chewable tablets. The first chewable to offer triple protection from heartworm disease, ticks and fleas, and roundworms and hookworms. It's also FDA approved to block infections that may cause Lyme disease by killing deer ticks.
Use with caution in dogs with a history of seizures. Serolaner belongs to the isoxazoline class, which has been associated with neurologic adverse reactions. The most common side effects were vomiting and diarrhea.
Visit SimparicaTrioDVM.com for full prescribing information.
Yes, that's a good point, that sometimes in the moment it can be hard to like have a teaching moment or really discuss a case thoroughly, or a decision thoroughly. But the communication coming with respect, obviously, no matter whether now's a good time or not, is important. And I know when I get anxious and behind and stressed and like worried about a decision that I have to make, and that's all clinical life is. It's just the decisions after decisions after decisions. And sometimes it gets to be a lot, and then I'm more likely to be short or snappy. And that is a personal thing that I want to work on. But also, as a technician or an assistant, sort of reading the room and reading the situation is important. If you want this to be a great dialogue and a back and forth that builds on itself and creates this collegial relationship, then sort of knowing when it's really out of the doctor's control, whether it's a good time. And it may not be the time to ask that question if things need to happen fast, fast, fast. But I also don't want to discourage people from speaking up in those situations if they feel like something is, they're like, I think we need to double check that dose, or like, I don't think that's the right D medication that you pulled up in that bottle, like that's the wrong dex that you have in that bottle. That is really important. And no matter how anxious somebody is or what kind of reaction they may be prone to having, like that input from technicians and their detail oriented, input is so critical. And so creating that culture is something that you can do as a veterinarian, whether you're an associate or an owner, as another team member, to say like, hey, if you ever actually just explicitly say, if you ever see me doing something you think is questionable, please call my attention to it,
Yeah.
And if I disagree with you, I'll say so, but it can be respectful how we do that and not have it be like questioning the other person's ability.
Oh, I had a situation the last time that I was in clinic where I almost overdosed a cat for a neuter. I mean, badly, by a whole decimal point with DKT. I just wrote it down and I handed it to the technician, and she went to draw it up, and she didn't say anything to me until I said something. I saw her drawing it up, and something deep down in my brain was like, "That's way too much volume."
It seems like a lot. Yeah.
But I was like, wait, is that right? And she said, well, I wasn't. It seemed high, and I was like, please say something.
Yeah.
Please say something.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is something that we as veterinarians, you're right, we need to be very clear that everyone in the entire clinic has a role to play in patient safety. Mistakes are made. I make mistakes. Anybody can make a decimal, mistake or a math mistake, and you've got to be comfortable speaking up for that. And hopefully, I hope that this technician will be more comfortable, with her gut feelings and things moving forward, that she will speak up, around me and around any other, veterinarian that might be in that clinic.
Yes. And one of the answers that we got was on Facebook was, I like it when they invite me to come and see new things so I can learn, or ask me what I think. So it's not just a matter of listening, because I think a lot of technicians, and I, as an assistant, sometimes felt this way, although because the vets that I work for knew I was going to vet school at some point, they were probably more likely to like teach me and show me things, which is unfair and it shouldn't be that way. But that's the way it was. But as an assistant or technician, to be invited to that conversation and have somebody say, hey, do you want to see this under the microscope? It's really cool. Or like, hey, I don't know if you've seen a case of these before. Do you want me to talk you through what we're doing? Or like, one person even said, like, please quiz me. And if I get something wrong, like, let's talk about why it's wrong. But that invitation to get things wrong, to say things out loud that you're not 100% sure about, to be new at something and not have that equal incompetence. I feel like that has helped me so much as a vet. And I can only imagine that technicians, having been in situations where they didn't feel welcome to show that vulnerability or to ask, be the one to ask if they can learn, may be hesitant to do that. So us, as veterinarians, like if we invite that conversation, that sets an example that may make it easier later for the technician to speak up and say, I don't think this is the right dose, because we've already shown that we value their opinion and want to know what they think. But it's something you can't just do one time. You have to sort of do that over and over again. And so when we were talking about this episode, we were like, well, we've had conversations about this before. Obviously, the profession needs to have a lot more conversations about this. But how is this sort of a different concept for an episode about Veterinary Technician Week? And I told you I was kind of thinking about it like a yearly opportunity to evaluate what more we could be doing as individuals, what more we as a profession could be doing to create this kind of environment for technicians. It's like a sound check, which should be done more than once a year, but at least it gives us a reason to say like, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on right now. What can I do differently?
Yep. I agree. Absolutely. Just that time to refocus, touch base, re-examine the things that you do. And the very next time I walk into the clinic, I'm going to, ask these questions from my team right off the bat and say, what can we do today to make today the best day it can be for everybody? Because, making work a fun place to go and be and where you feel valued. That's what we all want. That's everybody. Let's face it. Everybody in a veterinary clinic wants to be there, right? You're not there if you don't want to be there and take care of animals.
There are easier ways to earn a living,
right?
For
exactly.
Sure.
Much easier ways to earn a living.
Yeah, that is the truth. So
there was something that brought them there. Okay. And so be excited, find that excitement again, and then make sure that you're, going after that feeling every single day.
It's no fun to be like, I think if I could tell my high school self one thing about like to make my life better, for the last 25 years or whatever, it would have been that it is actually way cooler to be excited about things that you love and to share that excitement with people who also get excited about those things or about their own things. And it's actually not cool to like pretend that you don't care about stuff. Mm-hmm. And I feel like vet med is full of people who just like, are not afraid to be unashamedly like passionate about animals and about like snuggling baskets of puppies when they come in and wearing, scrub caps with like alligators on them, at age 46. And like, we're going to do those things because we as a culture can own that. And it's fun to be around people who are so excited. It's not fun to be around people who keep things completely bottled up and are afraid to be themselves and are afraid to ask questions and look a little stupid. It's a lot less fun to be in those kind of buttoned up environments. And so having a team around you that can be that kind of like goofy, but also vulnerable way with each other, I think is a powerful way to make everyone's day at work a little bit better. So we can be cool / uncool together. And those are the best days at the vet hospital.
That they are. That they are.
So, I mean, I think we've all heard of the love languages, right? Like there's, what's your love language? Oh, it's physical touch. Oh, it's quality time. And they do love languages for the workplace too. How do you like to receive appreciation? And some people love to be told in public they're doing a great job. Other people hate that. Some people like gifts, a raise, a bonus, like an extra day of PTO. And then other people really love just like, quality time with you, making sure you don't skip your one-on-ones or your weekly, staff meeting or whatever. Those things, those touch points are the most important. And I think this tech week always highlights that for me, because in a profession where technicians are leaving forever because they don't want to do the job anymore, they're not leaving because they don't like animals anymore. They're leaving because they haven't found a place that really fit what they wanted and needed from this career. And I feel like, to me, it is great to give them a tumbler with a monogram on it. Like, that's great. But it's also really important to make sure that they have a culture every day that allows them to fulfill any potential that they want to fulfill as a veterinary technician. So I think that is a great sort of underlying goal for Tech Week and beyond, is what does your team need to have a really great day at the clinic?
Yep. I agree.
So, Alyssa,
Yes.
I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
One is, if you go to the clinic tomorrow, based on the input that we got from our Facebook comments, what's one thing you're going to do differently tomorrow
I
for
think
your technicians?
I'm not in clinic tomorrow, but I'm actually in clinic the day after tomorrow. So that's perfect timing. That is perfect timing. I really want to lead the way on inviting them in. So I think every single thing that, when I calculate that drug dosage, instead of just handing it off, I'm going to say, what do you think of this? Or can you double check this for me? Or, what do you, have you done this differently? Tell me about a time that you had success with this medication or with this, or tell me about a time that it was awful, and then we can learn together.
That's awesome. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
And also, so my second question is,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a win of the week this week? Work or personal?
Yeah, I do have a win of the week. It is going to be personal this week. So my oldest son is 16 years old, and he got his driver's license. And this is a huge win for me, because now he can drive himself to all of his zillion after school activities, and it frees up a lot more time for me. And so he's very excited. We're very excited. Not excited about the car insurance rates, but I guess it is what it is.
I mean, I was going to ask I'm sure you're excited to get that time back, but now you also have a kid driving around on the road in a car with other people on the road too. I can imagine that would be like, I feel a little anxious just thinking about that, and I don't even have kids. So.
Well, luckily he's a really good kid, and honestly, I think he's a very good driver. So I trust him. I'm pretty proud of him.
That's awesome.
How about you, Katie? What's your win this week?
Well, so I was thinking about this because I had a clinic shift on Monday that was at a new hospital I had never worked at before. And it was a rough day. I've had many rougher days. I don't know what it was about the day. I think it started out with a woman rushing in with a dog that had been hit by a car, like right in front of her. And, it's like everyone's nightmare in general practice who doesn't like emergency. And then here I am, having been in that building for literally all of 5 minutes. I didn't know anybody's name. I didn't know where we kept anything. Like, I didn't know what we had available. I didn't know I knew how to use the practice management software because I've used it before. That was it. And so like it was definitely a tense, 30 minutes or whatever while we figured out what we needed to do. But I will say that I think the win for that day was it was kind of like a flashback for me of days that I've had in vet clinics in the past where over time, that built up into a lot of anxiety. And I just kind of felt the weight of all of that cumulative anxiety, like going to work every day. And I think now that I'm not in the clinic every day, it's given me a little bit of distance to be able to see days like Monday in a slightly different light and say, okay, what about this day went well? Like, what about this day are you grateful for? What about this day is going to teach you something that you can take to your next relief shift? And feeling like I can do that now is a win, because I think for a long time I was in the jar and couldn't see the label. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that distance has been really helpful. And so it got me thinking about like people who are in the clinic and in the clinic every day and sort of feeling the weight of that cumulative anxiety of like multiple stressful days in a row or days that you didn't really get to fully process, and just encourage people to do what I never really did, which is to sit with the hard day and try to process some of that and think through like what went well, what could I do differently next time, what did I learn, what part did I play in this success or failure, and then do that work, because it will weigh less heavy on you in the long run, I think. So anyway, that was a long-winded way of saying hard days are always hard, but I think processing them in the moment is probably a good thing to get in the habit of doing.
Yeah, that was a lesson that, I didn't learn in school. I didn't even learn in my first decade of practice. It was a very new concept to me to just say there's just a certain amount of stress that we can all take. You've got to lay that down, and you've got to, just like you said, do the work, because I always just bottled it away, just pushed it all away. And I was like, we'll think about it another time. And that is not a healthy way to live. So I'm glad that you found that in yourself, and still working through and trying to find that in myself too.
Well, and it helps to have a medical team here at Clinicians Brief and Plums where we can sort of like just share some of those things that it's just really hard to share with other people. Like I had a client walk out on me on Monday because he didn't want me to give him recommendations for his senior dog. He just wanted a rabies vaccine. Mind you, this is a full service vet clinic where you do a head to tail exam. We'd never seen the pet before. We had no records. So like, I wasn't going to just take the dog in the back and give it a rabies vaccine. You know what I mean? Like, it's not our job. And I was still going to vaccinate it, but I was asking him some questions, making some recommendations. He got very mad at me and he like walked out. And I feel like, processing stuff like that with people who aren't vets, like I told the story to my partner, and he very helpfully tried to explain to me that it wasn't about me. And, and I know that like, I didn't want a solution. I just wanted someone to be like, oh yeah, I hate that, or like good riddance, and like, that's all I wanted. And as soon as I told that story to another vet, they were like, well, dust it off the hands like that, you took care of that, a bad fit for the clinic. Like that everybody can move on with their lives and find something that works better for them. But like, I think that's key sometimes, is finding other people in vet med to just sort of like a little bit of venting and then helping each other move
past it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always here for you if you have a bad day.
Yes, thank you. Our vet team is very very helpful that way. Well, I guess that wraps it up for today's episode of The Break Room. If everybody is doing fun stuff for their technicians, and see, here I am saying it again, for their technicians. the same way that I would say for their doctors. You know, like but anyway, I apologize for anybody that I offend ever by using a possessive word to refer to you. It never means that I feel possessive over you, just that I feel like we're all in this together and we sort of belong to each other in that way. But anyway, if anyone's doing fun for the technician team at their hospital, we would love to hear about it. So let us know about that. And thanks for joining us in the Veterinary Breakroom.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us in the Veterinary Breakroom. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including a video version on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review us. You can also listen to or watch our podcast episodes on our website at cliniciansbrief.com/podcasts, or drop us a line at podcasts@vetmedics.com. Veterinary Breakroom is a Vetmedics production produced by Alexis Ussery and co-hosted by me, Dr. Alyssa Watson, and Dr. Beth Mollison.